The Wanganui District Council has done an about-turn on its bid to serve sex offender Stewart Wilson with a trespass notice every time he walks into a publicly owned area. So the so-called Beast of Blenheim, who's been living on the outskirts of Wanganui since the end of August, has been released from prison, and it's caused a public furore. The council reacted by announcing these restrictions on Wilson's movements, but it's been legally questioned. Mayor Annette joins us now by phone. Mayor, thanks for joining us. Why the change of heart?
The change of heart has come about because there's more information now from the Department of Corrections and the police about the restrictions on Mr Wilson's movement. So previously we did not have the information that he was not able to go into parks and play areas in Wanganui.
So this has nothing to do with the potential cost of legal action as has been threatened?
Well, certainly not for me. Actually, I didn't vote for the trespass orders in the first instance, but the majority of the council still felt that there was a risk that he would go in these places. Yes, we have been told by the Jarrod League that if we went ahead, they would be considering legal action, and I guess that's on the minds of councillors who don't want to be seen to be spending more of council's precious money on legal action. But at the same time, the extra information from the Department of Corrections, which has come about because we have that community action group that was formed at the time, is in good communication with both the police, communications agencies involved and also the general public.
So, Annette, the Department of Corrections has told you that Stewart Murray Wilson isn't allowed into any public areas of Wanganui, like the parks and the other areas accessed by families.
Certainly the parks and recreation areas, and that comes about because part of his parole conditions is he can't go to places where there are going to be children, likely to be children under 16. So that effectively rules out all of the parks and play areas. And those were the areas of most concern to the councillors who thought that the trespass orders were a tool that they could use.
Have you had any reaction from the community about your sort of U-turn on this?
No, I haven't yet. I did have some feedback when I voted against them at the time to say most of the reaction that I got was that it was sensible, given that it was the job of corrections and the police now to ensure this Mr Wilson actually complies with the terms of his parole.
Some of your councillors, however, haven't backed this U-turn. Is there a division in council as a result?
No, our council always has different opinions, as should most councils. They're supposed to be representing their community, so that will always be the case. But in the end, as I did when the majority of the council voted for these previously, in the end we all go along with the council decision once it's made.
All right, thank you very much. That is Annette, the Mayor of Wanganui. And listening to that interview, and with us now in our Christchurch studios, Jarrod Gilbert from the Jarrod League for Penal Reform. The group had planned to take the council to court if that decision wasn't reversed. Jarrod, you claiming credit for the back down?
Oh, look, I think the series of events is that the council was acting in a manner that we're all aware. The Jarrod League did decide to take legal action, and now they've backed down, and I think the ratepayers of Wanganui will be fairly happy about that.
Because it was going to be a pretty spendy exercise, was it not, potentially?
Yeah, look, the cost is one thing, but I think we need to look at this thing holistically, and the fact of the matter is that these types of shunning campaigns and trespass campaigns that the council were indulging in, best evidence shows that this in fact is more likely to lead to greater chance of re-offending, so they're actually not working in the public interest. Furthermore, the Department of Corrections and Parole Board had a very extensive plan and a very considered plan of where to put Mr Wilson, and that was in Wanganui, and they put him under the strictest parole conditions that have ever been seen in this country. Now, the Wanganui Council, many of the Wanganui councillors, the majority of Wanganui councillors, decided that they knew better than that and went against it. Now, they weren't working in the best interests of their community, nor in the best interests of New Zealand. And it just so happens they were also acting illegally. It wasn't a particularly pretty time for the council, I would suggest.
You obviously think the Department of Corrections is doing enough to keep the local community safe. What I want to ask you, though, is had the council not listened in the first place to the Department of Corrections when they said Stewart Murray Wilson is not going to be allowed into these areas where children are likely to be?
Look, this campaign for shunning and trespassing was built, I would argue, on politics rather than on best practice or on the best interests of the community. And I think that's what's really shameful about this. And it has cost the ratepayers already a considerable sum of money, and it was in nobody's interests to go down the path that they went down. Unfortunately, I think we should expect better from civic leaders.
However, you can understand their concern on behalf of their community. You know, I know that they've been criticised for this not in my backyard approach, but the reality is that I'm sure most communities in New Zealand would have a similar concern. This guy has never shown remorse.
Yeah, look, the irony, of course, is that Wanganui's worst sex offender is actually housed in Christchurch. So they're happy to export issues, but not necessarily happy to import them. Now, look, not in our backyard is all well and good, and I understand how the public can come to these types of beliefs because simple approaches are quite easy, at least at face value. But from community leaders, we should expect them to look at the best evidence, look at what is on the ground, what the plan for the Parole Board and the Department of Corrections had, which was incredibly rigorous and well thought out. And the Wanganui Council actually just rejected all that and said that we know better. And in doing so, all they really did was create massive public hysteria, which was quite unnecessary.
You happy now with how things are, given the fact they've pulled the pin on these trespass notices, or should the council be held to an extent responsible for whipping up this hysteria, as you call it?
Well, look, they will be held responsible, and I guess that will be for the voters of Wanganui to decide perhaps at the next election. But look, like all of these things, what's happened is that they were a big part of creating it. This hysteria has been whipped up, and now a calmness has returned, and I think we can more assess this logically and rationally. And look, a return to that is always welcome.
All right, thank you very much, Jarrod Gilbert from the Howard League for Penal Reform.